You know, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. 7 out of every 10 cars you see on the roads in Nigeria, used.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, why is that? What's going on there?
Right.
So today we're diving deep, deep into the used car market in Nigeria and all that it means for the country.
It really is more than just people buying older vehicles, you know?
Oh, yeah,
It's this huge trend that's tied to the economy, to global trade, to how people in Nigeria actually live and buy things.
for sure.
We've got some sources that really break it all down.
Yeah, this is a good one.
And what we really want to do is help you guys understand, like, the big forces behind this massive market.
Absolutely. So we've been digging deep into this document called The Rise of Used Cars in Nigeria.pdf.
Okay.
It's really given us a great overview.
Sounds good.
So the first thing that just pops into my head is, why are used cars so popular in Nigeria? Like, what's the main reason?
Well, I think the core of it is, the economic situation in Nigeria.
Mhm.
It's been up and down, right? And the inflation rate, it was over 28% at the beginning of 2024.
Oof, that's rough.
It puts a lot of pressure on people.
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of that, it's not easy to get foreign currency.
Right,
And the naira is, getting weaker.
right.
So suddenly buying a brand new car is a real stretch for most people.
Yeah, and the report even mentions that a new car can cost upwards of 25 million naira.
Exactly.
That's just not feasible for most people.
It's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where these Tokunbo cars, these imported used cars, become so appealing.
Right.
A lot of them are only a few years old.
Right.
And they can cost like 40 to 60% less
Wow.
than a new one.
So when you're looking at that kind of price difference,
Mm-hmm.
it's a no-brainer.
It's a practical choice.
Totally.
Oh.
Totally. And it's not even just the upfront cost, right?
Right.
Our source mentions that even getting a car loan is super difficult.
Yeah, that's really important. Borrowing money for a car in Nigeria is expensive.
Right.
Really expensive.
Yeah.
So getting financing for a new car, it's just not attractive for a lot of folks.
It's just not going to happen.
So they end up buying a used car outright. It's often the only way.
Yeah.
And this whole dominance of used cars,
Yeah.
it just shows you the pressure that so many people are feeling.
It's a reflection of the bigger picture, for sure. Okay, so we've got the economic side of things, but I'm curious about the actual logistics.
Yeah.
Where are these Tokunbo cars coming from, and how do they actually get into Nigeria?
Well, it's a pretty big operation.
Yep.
Most of these used cars, they're coming from, the U.S., Germany, Japan,
Okay.
big car-producing countries.
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria imports over 500,000 of these vehicles each year.
Wow, that's a huge number.
It is. And the main entry points are ports in Lagos, like Apapa and Tin Can Island.
Right.
But there's also a really interesting thing happening in Benin through their port in Cotonou.
Really? Why Cotonou?
Well, you see, Nigeria has these high import tariffs, right? And like we talked about, their currency is weaker.
Right, right.
So it actually makes more sense financially for a lot of importers to bring the cars in through Cotonou.
Wow.
And then they often end up in Nigeria anyway.
That's fascinating. So they're going through all this extra effort just to save money.
Yeah, it shows you how these tariffs can have unintended consequences, right?
Right.
And how people find ways to adapt to get what they need.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And speaking of finding ways, the report also mentioned this whole informal market, like a smuggling network.
Oh, yeah, the smuggling. That's a key part of the story.
Yeah, how does that work?
So official data from 2023 showed that used car imports actually dropped by about 12%.
Okay.
But here's the thing. The number of used cars on the roads didn't seem to go down that much.
Interesting.
So that tells us that there's a lot of activity happening through these unofficial channels, cars moving across borders where they're not supposed to.
Right, under the radar.
Exactly. So the official numbers only tell part of the story.
It sounds like there's a whole hidden market going on.
There is. It's quite dynamic.
Yeah, it really shows you how resilient the market is, even with all these restrictions. Now, when Nigerians are shopping for these used cars, are there certain brands or models that they tend to go for?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There are some clear favorites.
Okay, what are we seeing?
Toyota is, like, the king.
Toyota, makes sense.
Yeah, their Corolla, Camry, Highlander, those are always in high demand.
They have a good reputation.
They do. They're known for lasting
Right.
and holding their value well.
Especially in Nigeria, I bet.
Yeah, exactly. Honda's up there, too, with the Accord and Civic.
Okay,
Lexus, especially their RX series.
nice. Those are popular everywhere.
They are. And then you've got the Nissan Altima, another solid choice.
Makes sense. Those are all brands known for reliability.
Right, and with everything we talked about with the economics, it's understandable why people would go for those.
Totally, totally.
But it's not just about brands, you know?
Oh, right.
Different cars for different needs.
Yeah, of course.
So for commercial use, you see a lot of diesel SUVs and pickup trucks.
Okay, makes sense.
Ford, Mitsubishi, those are popular.
Workhorses.
And in the cities,
Mm-hmm.
people like smaller cars, more fuel efficient.
Yeah, easier to park, zip around.
Exactly. Hyundai Elantra, Kia Rio, that kind of thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing the report even had some of the actual search terms people use online.
Oh, yeah. That's fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's like peeking into their minds.
You see things like best Tokunbo cars in Nigeria, very general, but then also Toyota Camry 2009 price and logos.
Wow, very specific.
It's super specific.
They know what they want.
They do. They're doing their research.
It's really cool how technology has changed everything. And speaking of which, the report talked about these online platforms.
Yeah.
How have they affected the used car market in Nigeria?
These platforms, they've been a real game changer.
Yeah, how so?
Well, in the past, the used car market wasn't always the most transparent, right?
Right.
A little shady sometimes.
Yeah.
But these platforms like GG.in, Cars45, AutoCheck, Jakey, they're bringing in more transparency.
Okay.
A lot of them now offer vehicle history reports.
Ooh, that's good.
So you can see if the car's been in an accident, anything like that.
Important stuff.
Really important.
Yeah.
They also have financing options, inspection services, and tons of listings all in one place.
Wow. So it's like one-stop shopping.
Exactly. So you can compare prices, features, different sellers.
That's amazing.
It really empowers the buyer, gives them more control.
Right. Much better than just going to a random dealership.
Totally. And it's not just the platforms themselves.
Oh, right.
The report also talks about the influence of online content creators.
You mean like car reviewers on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube reviewers, Instagram car enthusiasts, even podcasts like us, we're all shaping opinions.
It's a new way of getting information.
It is. The whole information ecosystem has changed.
I can only imagine what the government thinks about all this.
Right. I mean, with so many used cars coming in, they've definitely taken notice.
So what have they tried to do about it?
They've tried a few things. One big thing is raising import tariffs.
Okay. To make it more expensive to bring in cars from abroad.
Exactly. And then they've also launched initiatives like the NAIDP, the Nigeria Automotive Industry Development Plan.
What's that all about?
It's basically about trying to boost local car manufacturing,
Okay.
giving companies incentives to make cars in Nigeria.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, the goal is to get people buying more new cars, local ones.
Right. But the report said those policies haven't been totally successful.
Yeah, they haven't really curbed the demand for used cars.
Why not?
Well, the local car industry isn't quite there yet.
You mean they're not making enough affordable cars?
Exactly. And financing for new cars is still a problem.
Right. We talked about that.
So people are still turning to used cars.
It's a tough situation.
Yeah.
And what about that ban on older vehicles?
Oh, yeah. They recently banned importing cars older than 15 years.
I remember hearing about that. What was the reasoning there?
Well, they said it was for environmental reasons.
Okay.
Older cars pollute more, right?
Agreed. Makes sense.
And they said it was for safety, too.
Right.
But a lot of people, the importers and the buyers, they weren't happy about it.
Yeah, I bet.
They said it was limiting their options even further.
Without giving them better alternatives.
Exactly. So it's a real balancing act,
Right.
trying to protect the environment, improve safety, but also making sure people can afford to get around.
It's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
So this whole used car market, it must have a big impact on other industries, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
The report talked about tires and spare parts. Those are two big ones.
Okay, let's start with tires.
So the tire market in Nigeria is huge, worth over $600 million.
Wow.
And a lot of that demand comes from people needing to replace tires on their used car.
Especially with the roads in Nigeria, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. That definitely plays a role. You've got the big international brands, Michelin, Bridgestone, Dunlop. But there's also a growing market for cheaper brands, mostly from China,
Makes sense.
like Linglong, Double Coin. Those are popular.
So the tire market's basically driven by used cars.
In a big way, yeah. And then you've got spare parts.
Right, right.
People with used cars, they need everything from batteries to brake pads to engine parts.
We have more maintenance.
And this has created these thriving markets all over Nigeria.
Yeah.
Places like Ledipo and Lagos, Aba, Onitsha, these places are packed with spare parts.
It's a whole ecosystem supporting this huge fleet of used cars.
It really is.
Wow. So looking ahead, what do you think the future holds for Nigeria's used car market?
Well, there are definitely some challenges.
Okay, what are the big ones?
Well, with so many older cars on the roads, emissions are a concern,
Right.
and safety is a big issue, too.
Yeah, with older cars, that's always a worry.
And there's not really a strong system for inspecting cars.
So some of them might not be roadworthy.
Exactly. So there's that whole environmental and safety aspect.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about electric vehicles? Do you think they'll take off in Nigeria?
There's definitely growing interest in EVs.
Mm-hmm.
People are becoming more aware of the environmental benefits,
Right.
but there are still some big hurdles.
Like what?
Well, the charging infrastructure isn't really there yet.
Right. You need places to charge them.
Exactly. And EVs are still very expensive.
Yeah, that's a big barrier for most people.
It is. Hybrids are starting to gain some traction, though,
Okay.
especially among people who can afford them.
Right, right. And the report mentioned something about certified pre-owned programs.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting development.
What's the idea behind that?
It's kind of a way to bridge the gap between used and new cars.
Okay.
You get the affordability of a used car,
Mm-hmm.
but with some added peace of mind
Okay, like that.
because they come with a warranty or a guarantee.
So it's less risky than buying a regular used car.
Exactly. Some dealerships and online platforms are starting to experiment with it.
It'd be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, it could be a good way to make the used car market even better.
Cool, cool. So after all this, it's clear that used cars in Nigeria are more than just a preference.
Oh, yeah?
It's deeply tied to the country's economy,
Hmm.
global trade, people's habits, government policies. It's all connected.
It's a reflection of where Nigeria is right now.
Absolutely. It shows how resourceful people are,
Yeah.
finding ways to get around despite the challenges.
Right, adapting to this situation.
So our listeners, you've now got a much deeper understanding of this really important part of the Nigerian economy
Hmm.
and how it affects the everyday lives of millions of people. We talked about the economic reasons, how the cars actually get into Nigeria,
Right.
the popular choices, the impact of technology, and what the government's been trying to do.
It's a complex picture.
It is, but hopefully we've made it a little clearer.
I think so.
And this brings us to our final thought for you to ponder. Given how reliant Nigeria is on used cars, what does that mean for the country's future,
Mm-hmm.
for its industry, for the environment? What kind of solutions might come up in the next few years?
Yeah.
It's a question worth thinking about.
It is. It's something that will affect everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been great.
We'll catch you next time. See you.